Hello, welcome to another boxing predictions video. This is Chris Eubank Jr. So normally I do boxing predictions or boxing reviews, but today I'm going to focus on a Pacific fighter, and that's current IBO super middleweight champion Chris Eubank Jr. So last weekend on RTV Box Office, Chris Eubank Jr. Beat, and to be honest, normally I actually get know all the people's names beforehand, but I had to go on my tablet and look through Chris Eubank Jr.'s fight record and to see who he actually beat for it. And the guy he beat was called Ronald, I think it was Ronald Quinlan or something. That's probably wrong. I'm not the best to pronounce the name, sorry about that. But basically, the video is about what's next for him and why I think the sort of hype around him is far too much. So Chris Eubank Jr. is 27 years old and he's fought at middleweight and currently plies his trade at super middleweight division. Like I just said, he won the IBO belt last Saturday, which is his first, world title. He did hold a WBA interim version at middleweight back in 2015 before vacating it or releasing it, however you want to say it. I'm not sure if it was immediately or after his next fight or along those lines. But yeah, so he vacated that belt to move on to bigger and better things, which ultimately became the British middleweight title belt. And he beat who did he beat? He beat Nick Blackwell for the belt, and he defended it once against someone I can't actually remember. But I did watch the fight, but I know he won by knockout. And he has lost one fight, which was back in 2015 against current WBO middleweight champion Billy Joe Saunders. That was like a domestic grudge match because they didn't like each other. Many things were said about back and forth between each camps, between the fighters as well. Many words were said, and ultimately Billy Joe Saunders won by a decision victory. And since then, Chris Eubank Jr., as I said, has flirted around with a few different opponents, picking up the odd belt here and there, as I said, connecting the WBA interim belt, the British middleweight title as well, and of course now the IBO super middleweight title belt. But before he was going to fight for the IBO super middleweight belt, I'm not sure if it was between the Nick Blackwell fight or I think it was along those lines last year. He was going to fight Conor Golovkin. And this is where I think the problem lies down with Chris Eubank Jr. and I think Chris Eubank Sr., who of course is his dad, and everyone knows who Chris Eubank Sr. is. They claim people have gone around on record to say it's their fault or it's the other side's fault. Chris Eubank Jr. has blamed various people. Same with Senior. Another different side of promoters like Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren have come out openly publicly and said about criticising them for the way they deal with things, which of course, on one side you can say they're trying to do the best they can money-wise or trying to get as much money as they can because, as people do know, boxing can be, your career can be active 1 minute and the next minute you could be out permanently. So I guess in that sort of financial aspect or business aspect, they're trying to get as much money as they can. It probably is unfair, which is probably why they didn't get to fight Golovkin. Of course, he went on to fight Kell Brook last year, and he won by a knockout in the 6th round, I think, or TKO or stoppage. But what I'm trying to say is basically I think the hype around Chris Eubank Jr. is a bit needs to die down a little bit because I'm not saying he's got the biggest fan base in the world, but the fights I've seen, he doesn't really possess if you think about a good fight, you think about power, speed, technical ability, defence, stamina, all the attributes. Everyone should know this by now. And I think that Chris Eubank Jr. is athletic. Obviously, he's always in shape. Yeah, he's got the speed, he's got the endurance, but the power was missing, which is a key attribute. But I just think the way he's going about himself, I think is quite wrong. Chris Eubank Sr. was outspoken, and it worked for him back in the 90s. He's a very popular figure. For likes of Nigel Benn, Steve Collins. So yeah, he had those big grudge matches. Michael Watson as well. And everyone knows how those two fights panned out. And he was very popular. But I listen to a boxing podcast every week, the Sky Sports Ringside podcast. And there's a guy called Spencer Fearon, and people probably know what it is. And he's very good at what he speaks about. And you know when you listen to something and normally you just gloss over, you listen to it because it's something you're interested in. But something he said was really, really interesting to me, and it sort of links in with this video, is to do with Chris Eubank Sr.'s title defences. He beat Nigel Benn and he didn't really fight anyone after, apart from the Benn rematch. And if you think of Chris Eubank Jr.'s fights now, the biggest fight he's lost, which is against Billy Joe Saunders. Yeah, he's picked up the IBO belt at super middleweight, and he could go on to fight the likes of James DeGale, which he's called out, who's the IBF champion. He could go back down to middleweight, fight Gennady Golovkin at some point. Of course, Gennady Golovkin's one of the biggest draws at the minute in boxing. He could go and fight those people, but the classic case at the minute, all I can see is that he's saying these things and nothing's happening. He says he's going to go and avenge the Billy Joe Saunders fight. Billy Joe Saunders has only fought once since 2015. He beat Andy Lee in late 2015 for the WBO belt, and he's fought one person. I can't pronounce the guy he fought. It was end of last year, and it was a terrible performance from what I gathered. But in that time, I know things got like cancelled, injuries, but if Chris Eubank Jr. was so determined to avenge the defeat that he got back in 2014, if that was me, I would do my absolute best to go and challenge Billy Joe Saunders for a rematch. Of course, rankings is very important as well. You can't sort of get away from that. I know injuries did play a part, but if that was me, I would do my best to go and avenge my defeat if I can straight away, and then move on to bigger and better things. But instead, Joe Saunders got injured and other things materialised, and then he moved on to Gennady Golovkin, and people have said a few times in various videos that he priced himself out of the fight, which I think is wrong on many reasons, because if you're not the champion, if you don't hold any belts and you're not as big as a draw as the other person, if that was me, I would take anything I could just to get the fight, because Gennady Golovkin is the current middleweight champion. Chris Eubank Jr. has had 20 plus fights at that point, and has held a WBA interim version of a belt that Golovkin holds, the full actual proper title. It's not always different people, and it just seems that like he thinks he's bigger than he actually is, which I think is quite wrong, because like, say if he got the fight and he destroyed Golovkin and he had all those belts, then yeah, you could say he's taken out the best person in the middleweight division, and you can't really say anything else. Then if he loses in the rematch or down the line, and yeah, that's different. But if he just accepted the terms, whatever they were, and fought him and beat him, yeah, I don't think many people would say anything different. But the fact that like he's processed about the fight, then he can go to bigger and better things, which I think is a bit strange, because Golovkin is the biggest draw in the division, which he currently was at back then. Then he fights like with Nick Blackwell, which was a good, obviously, domestic fight for the British middleweight title. I know Nick Blackwell did go on to have some damage, which caused him to retire, which is never good to see. And then he obviously defended it once, then he relinquished it. Then there was there's a big apparently it was like rumours that circulated about other fights. Now he's jumped up against the super middleweight division, beat Ronald Quinlan, I think that's how you say it, if that's wrong again, sorry. Picks up a minor world title, but it's still world title nonetheless, and he wants to call out all these names, which you can do, of course, because if you're a world champion and you're a big name and it's a big pulling factor, then yeah, James DeGale versus Chris Eubank Jr. would be a great fight, because I think they're both very talented boxers. But if you sort of weigh up like opponents and credibility, and after a while, when you sort of think about it really, like James DeGale a long time ago was very annoying in my opinion. He wouldn't shut up about stuff like the George Groves fight. If you just YouTube it, the build up was so annoying. Like imagine trying to sit next to someone for a fight and they would like just wouldn't shut up. You just think, Jesus Christ, what have you got to do to shut this guy up? And I think he learned a lot from the George Groves defeat, and look what he's done. He's built himself back up again, and he's now got a world title. I know his last fight against was it Badu Jack was a draw in Las Vegas for the WBC and Ring Magazine super middleweight titles. Up for debate who could have won that fight, but he's actually grown from his defeat and worked his way up again to world title contention. He's done it the proper way, whereas, no disrespect to Chris Eubank Jr., he's like lost to someone who he probably could have beat and should have beat, and he could have got a world title shot against the best person in his division, and he could have beat, that's it, the best person in his division. And if you beat him, it would be completely different. It would be top of his weight class, have all these multiple belts, could take on who he wanted, probably would have a rematch clause in it, but that's not really the point because that never got made. Said he was going to do all these other things, hasn't done it yet, and now has gone up a division, fought someone who had 12 professional fights, picked up a belt, not in a horrible way, but it's probably conned a lot of the public, or has like somehow produced ITV box events, which I don't really understand. I didn't even know that was a thing. I know ITV started producing boxing again because Carl Frampton was on there a couple of times a few years ago, but I didn't even know they had a box office, which I think is quite bad. ITV, I've never paid for an ITV boxing match ever, and I know I'm quite young, but I've never heard ITV. I didn't even know ITV had a box office service, so I think that was quite bad on their behalf. Nothing wrong with kind of various networks, but Chris Eubank Jr. has been on 3 different networks. Now he's been on 4 different networks since I've watched him. He's been on Channel 5, Sky Sports, Box Nation, and now ITV. It's like you need to sort of, after a while you would have to think to yourself like, well, pick a division, stick with it, and stick with a network as well. If it doesn't go well, if you've tried your absolute best and it hasn't worked out, then move. He jumped all around, and now I'm getting the feeling that a lot of people are getting really annoyed with him because like promoters and other people don't really want to do business with him because like Chris Eubank and Chris Eubank Senior have sort of like tried to have been really unreasonable, really unprofessional in some ways as well. But it's not up for debate. But I just think at the minute he needs to sort of just like settle down in one specific division for a while and work his way up. Not, well, if he can fight against James DeGale, yeah, that'd be great for another world title. But if he can go against James DeGale with someone with a bit more recognition, work his way up, and actually beat a good selection of fighters, and maybe go against Golovkin or maybe go against James DeGale. But I think in a minute trying just to jump the gun and just expecting these big fights just to happen because you're Chris Eubank Jr. If I was going to Golovkin, or if I was James DeGale or Billy Joe Saunders, the Billy Joe Saunders one is a bit different because they've got history. But if I was James DeGale or Golovkin, for example, like if I saw someone who had picked up a few random belts, changing networks all the time, going up divisions all the time, if that was me, like I would think, no offence, but like I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, like fighting people at my weight classes, and if it's a real temptation, I go and do it. Like there's other fighters in the mid division and in around those divisions who are better, like Canelo Alvarez, for example. Like I know he's fighting Chavez Jr., but I do think Chavez Jr. and Canelo Alvarez are better because they've got the names on the record, they've got credibility, and they're more world renowned. Like Chris Eubank Jr., I don't. If you asked in America or other countries, do you know who that is? They probably would say no. But so I've been ranting on for quite a while, but I tried to make this really quite short. But so what I'm saying is, leave the comments down below what you think about Chris Eubank Jr., what he should do next, who he should fight. Do you think I'm right about saying he should stick to a Pacific network for a while and stick to a Pacific weight class, or do you think you should just go for it and not care like about stability or recognition, just go and try and get the biggest paydays available? But what I personally think before this video ends, I think he should go back down to the middle of the division, try his best to get the Billy Joe Saunders rematch, pick up the world title if it's on the line, and then he's got a good a stake then to go against Golovkin. I know the WBO isn't well renowned or recognised as highly as WBA, WBC or IBF, but it's still a world title. And imagine how good that would be. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Gennady Golovkin for all those world titles on the line. That's a real selling point because he's got a world title, he's got something that is worth something to Golovkin. But at the minute, he's jumping up and down all the time and like jumping over these different networks and that, it just seems very unorganised, very unprofessional. Considering Chris Eubank Senior was very solid throughout his career. He was like middleweight for a while, picked up a world title, fought a few people on his record, jumped up division as well. Didn't lose a fight for like I think it was like 5 years or something in the Sigma division. Didn't he obviously run into a few good people, maybe age got caught to injuries or whatever, but like he actually had a solid base and he was with Barry Hearn for the majority of his career, then Frank Warren. Yeah, it didn't really end very well because he lost a lot of fights, but he was solid throughout his career, whereas I would expect someone like Chris Eubank Senior to actually show him a bit more structure, a bit more like stability. At the minute that's not happening. But that's my opinion on the matter. Sorry if it was a bit sort of chop and changing with a bit of the like, if it's sometimes I might have got off one way and another, but that's my view on Chris Eubank. You know what he has to do next. Give it a like and comment if you would, and see the next video.